So let's get to the main event here. Fucking Oscar Valdez stopping Miguel Berchelt in the 10th round. Fucking leveled him. Leveled him. Like that. 1 punch knockout. And like I said at the top of this episode, in my opinion, that right there is the top performance since the COVID lockdown. Since we've been fighting in these bubbles and shit, this is the best performance, because this is what I thought was going to happen, right? I thought, because if you've seen Valdez fight before, lower levels of opposition have lured him into really physical, drag him out fights. Adam Lopez and, Jason Valdez. I'm not saying these are bad opponents, but I would have picked Berchelt to beat any of those guys. You know what I mean? So I thought that Berchelt, with his relentlessness, with his size, his physicality, the fact that he's been the title holder at 130 for a long time, I just thought that he was going to be able to kind of out-activity Valdez, even if Valdez could keep it pretty for a second, and that Berchelt would get a head of steam going, maybe clip him and hurt him, and then that would be it, right? That's what I thought was going to happen. I think that's what a lot of people thought was going to happen. And that's not what happened at all. And I'm telling you, it's because Valdez's game went up 2-3 levels. Like, if I had any idea he could do that, I would have picked him. You know what I'm saying? Because he was at a completely different level of slickness and boxing skill than Berchelt. And it all started with the jab. It all started with the jab. The first round, he's a little antsy. He's swinging kind of, maybe a little too big. But the second round, he starts to relax into his movement and his upper body movement. And he starts letting that jab go. And by the end of the second round, Berchelt's nose is gushing blood and really puffy, almost exclusively from the jab. You know what I'm saying? And Valdez, with the head movement, it was like every time Berchelt tried to set and throw a combination, he couldn't land anything. But, Valdez would make him miss a couple of times and then smother him and then turn him, right? You know what I mean? He'd be on the outside, miss. He'd get real close, and then he'd turn out and he'd get out of the corner. So he didn't give Berchelt really any rope time. There was, he was never stationary for Berchelt to just sit down on a combination. And then in the fourth round, right, he hurts Berchelt really badly and drops him at the end of the fourth round. I kind of thought maybe he's going to stop him here. It had that look, But in the fifth, I felt like he keeps that assertion. But by the sixth and the seventh, Berchelt actually starts to make the effort to come forward and try to, make his presence known. And he doesn't really land anything. Like, he's swinging and he's on the front foot, and you can see Valdez is having to work harder. But he really couldn't land much of anything effective or consistently. There was one stretch where he's throwing. He must have thrown 10, 12 punches, and he landed, I think, one. So it was one of those rounds where it was like he was kind of putting his last hit of effort into it, because after the seventh round, man, it was really all Valdez, and he found his full boxing rhythm, and I think he started to hit a head of steam and just took over the fight completely. Now, by the time the knockout came in the 10th round, like, I could have been cool with the corner stopping it at the end of the ninth. I really could have been. And then there was 2-3 moments in the 10th where I would have been cool with the ref stopping it. So, while this is a crazy knockout and it's one of the best knockouts, in a while, this is one that maybe didn't need to happen. And maybe, I think, it's weird. As I watch more boxing, as I get a little older, I'm a little more sensitive to knockouts, which is a weird thing. Like, it's part of why you watch boxing, is the shock of the knockout. But the more I watch it and understand, like, the craft, the more jarring that is, particularly if it seems like it's unavoidable. I don't know what that is. But I'm definitely getting a little more sensitive to knockouts. But the thing that was beautiful about this fight, aside from Valdez's great footwork and great strategy, was that he put it all together, man. Because you've seen him do each thing individually sometimes. And even in the last fight, you could see him trying to make that transition into a boxer And Valdez was just awkward enough to make that complicated for him. And this one, it just all came together, man. He was switching southpaw and throwing little feints, and it would kill Berchelt's rhythm every single time. He would switch stances for a sec. He might not even throw anything. He'd just have him southpaw, feint, roll out of the corner, go back to his stance. Like, the jab was money the whole fucking time. The jabs and the feints and the turns off the ropes, all the stuff that he was doing defensively to keep Berchelt occupied and keep him turning and keep him almost chasing his own tail. That's the shit that won him the fight. Because by the time he starts sitting down to, you know, throw power punches, Berchelt is open for it. Because he's been popping him with the jab, popping him with the jab, sticking it in his stomach. And Berchelt's got his hands here. Every time he sees the jab, he's trying to paw it. So he goes to paw the jab, and it turns into a hook. Boom. And that just kept happening over and over again. The jab and the left hook, you know, confusing him, not sure what's going to come at him. So I'm just very impressed with Oscar Valdez. This is one of those times where I love being wrong. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I did the prediction on this fight, and I was feeling pretty strong about it. And this is one where, I just love that this is how it went. It really was a great performance. And for me, anybody at 130, he's in the mix. I'm not saying you got to say he's going to win, but anybody at 130, I'm talking Tank, I'm talking Shakur Stevenson, this guy's in the mix. You got to give it to him. The only thing I'm going to say about Berchelt is they said he weighed 146 the night of the fight, which means he put on 16 pounds. I'm going to go ahead and guess that he didn't have like a great weight cut, and his punch resistance looked like it. You know what I'm saying? Like, this fight looked similar to Jermell Charlo and Jason Rosario. He just couldn't really get off the way he wanted to. And you could see, I don't know if Rosario had a bad weight cut. I'm just saying that's what the fight kind of looked like. He just didn't look like he had great punch resistance, and he didn't really look like he could pull the trigger the way he wanted to. I don't really know what's next for him. That's a big rebuild. He may want to move up to 135. He's such a big guy. You know, he's a welterweight the night of these fights. It seems like lightweight might be a more appropriate weight class for him. And, I mean, that's pretty much all I got to say about that fight. I was really impressed with the whole performance.